Hi, I'm David Griffith, editor of Police Magazine, and we're here speaking today with Guillaume Delepine, Senior Director of Go-to-Market Strategies for Skydio. We're going to be talking about drones as first responder programs. Drone as first responder has really taken off in this country, and more agencies are getting interested in this technology and how it can reduce the number of calls that they receive that nobody's there when they get there, and other issues that law enforcement agencies face, especially these days with officer shortages. Guillaume, what impacts are law enforcement agencies seeing from DFR programs, and how do drones improve officer and community safety?
Yeah, David, first of all, thank you so much for having me and having Skydio. We've been big fans of the work that you and all of Police Mag do and been following you for years. So thrilled to be here and thanks for having us.
Well, thank you.
Um, it's really hard to think of another technology that's led to as many outcomes for public safety as DFR has. DFR, when it's implemented at scale and agencies really commit to it, has been shown to reduce use of force incidents, to help alleviate staffing shortages, to improve relations with the community, which is somewhat of a counterintuitive one that we can get into, improve officer mental health and reduce the stress of going into calls, from really all of the core operations that a police department has to actually go through, to protect their community. DFR has really far-reaching impacts on all of those, and so I'll be excited to get into those with you today.
Well, let's follow up on that community relations issue. A lot of communities are a little nervous about drones. So, how does a DFR program help the community and help community relations with the law enforcement agency?
Yeah, certainly. And the resistance that we do see against drones is generally people who are going to be resistant to any new police technology or any new piece of government intelligence technology. And there are certainly great arguments. I don't want to get into whether that's right or wrong.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But what we do see is in agencies where you have DFR successfully implemented, the things that it does for the community are so spectacular that you end up actually getting much more far-reaching benefits that are recognized by the community. So one example is in under-policed areas, drone as first responder programs can help you reduce response times and have a much more engaged police force. They can help you de-escalate situations before they escalate into a potential use of force incident, right? How many times does an officer show up, very little information, rapidly expanding and changing situation, right? And a use of force incident happens, sometimes totally necessary, but a lot of times it might not have had to if you could have responded with different tactics because you had the situational awareness going into the call. Every situation that you de-escalate like that improves your relationship with that piece of the community and everything that surrounds it. And it's to the extent that, I was with an agency a couple of years back that was doing DFR, and as the police drone was flying in pursuit of a suspicious person that had been called in, you had all these civilians on the ground saying, "Hey, that way," right, and collaborating with those remote operators. It was really a beautiful thing to see, and so we fully acknowledge that there are some concerns, but generally we just encourage our customers, hey, engage head on, be open and transparent, and we actually provide tools to help with that transparency with the community, that can alleviate some of the concerns so that we can all start to focus on these really transformational benefits that are just amazing for the communities where DFR.
Well, let's talk about Skydio's technology for a moment. What makes the Skydio X10 drone well suited to DFR missions?
Yeah, X10 was built with DFR in mind from the beginning. It's the fourth drone that Skydio has put out, but it's the first one that we've developed since we started to have a large business with Skydio 2 and X2. And so we're so lucky to work with over 400 police agencies in all 50 states, and each of them has provided feedback that contributed to the X10 and making it the DFR machine that it is today. It always starts with autonomy, right? Officers are trained to protect the community. They're not trained to be pilots, right? Not all of them, at least. And so if you can build AI-assisted flight technology to bring down the burden and bring down the difficulty of operating these things in the air and getting the data you want, you can actually get your program spun up a lot faster, and without having to go out and hire a bunch of specialists, and keep your officers directly involved and have it more as a tool than a service that they receive. Then you look at the hardware, right? There's cameras on there that are the strongest cameras for any drone in its class. If you want to get cameras on a drone that are bigger than on the Skydio X10, you're looking at something quite a bit larger and heavier that you're going to have trouble throwing in the back of a patrol car or carrying out on a search and rescue mission. And so we really hit that sweet spot where biggest sensors you can get on a backpack portable drone. We've also made massive improvements to our wireless connectivity. And we've actually changed the game a lot, right? A lot of folks think about wireless connectivity traditionally, your drone controller connected to your drone via a Wi-Fi link. And for the last decade, drone companies have been in a bit of an arms race to see who can have the strongest Wi-Fi link. But X10 changes that whole game. Now X10 can actually communicate over 5G, over cellular networks. And so anywhere that you have cell service, you can fly that drone from anywhere in the world that has an internet connection. So any browser can control any drone anywhere, as long as you've got the right cybersecurity permissions and you're authenticated, right? But what that does is it completely changes the game from just competing to see who's got the strongest wireless link, which was the story of the last 10 years, to now, hey, we can just fly these drones wherever we need to, and we're gonna be successful that way. So the connectivity, the cameras, have all contributed to making just a really spectacular aircraft that also checks all the boxes that that first responders need, right? The ability to fly in high and low temperatures, high and low altitudes, have long loiter times, be able to seamlessly hand off control from the browser to the pilot, right? All of the basics are there, but also just those really, really spectacular capabilities with the camera, with the wireless, the autonomy.
Your website talks about Skydio's complete DFR program. Can you give me some insight into what that is actually?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of vendors out there taking shortcuts, right? And thinking that just providing a drone and some hardware is enough for an agency to go and figure out the rest of it, right? A lot of times you won't even talk to the technology provider. You'll talk to some intermediary that happens to be in your business. But to really provide a DFR program, you have to do a few things. One is you got to support the whole mission, and then you have to support the agency in between the missions. And so on a mission, we say you got to be ready, you got to respond, and you got to report. Being ready means you've got a dock for your drone. That dock is internet connected. It's installed somewhere in your jurisdiction that you can reach it over the internet. It's plugged into power, right? You've got a dock that's weatherized and rugged enough to survive out there in between your calls. And you can launch in 15 seconds. That's kind of the benchmark, right? Every second matters. We're talking about a direct second that goes to the agency's response time metrics, right? So the launch in 15 seconds is really the bar. You've got to have drones that are stationed around your community. You've got to have your airspace awareness figured out, right? Maybe you're using a product like Drone Beyond. Maybe you're using the built-in ADS-B sensor on the Skydio docks, right? And what you have to do is make sure that you can take off at a moment's notice, right? So the other side of that is reacting to environmental triggers, right? Being able to take in data from something like a Fusus by Axon, right? Where I might be listening for automated license plate reader pings or for a shot detection system that's out there in the community, right? And able to just deploy before my human pilot gets the word from dispatch, right? Because dispatch has to go do triage and then call again. And so that ready phase is all about being able to take off right away. Once you take off, we're in that respond phase that I mentioned earlier. And there, what's really important is having a really nice user interface. Skydio's is called Remote Flight Deck, right? But what you're doing is remote operating your drone. And you need a drone that can get to where the crime is. There are a lot of drones that, because they are afraid of crashing and avoiding obstacles, they stay up at about 200 feet when they fly their drone as first responder missions. The tough thing is, how are you going to identify a suspect in a car? How are you going to clear something overhung? How are you going to check the hallway at an outdoor school, right? You can't do any of that if your drone is stuck at 200 feet because you're afraid of crashing it. And so you need a drone that has built-in obstacle avoidance, right? And building geofences is not good enough, right? That's like trying to cover the world in leather instead of wearing, right? the final thing that you got to be able to do is report, right? So report to your community via transparency dashboards. Also report to your DA, right? And to your record keepers at your agency through something like an evidence.com. And our partnership has been one of the greatest things for our customers. That's all the mission, and that's very, very important to get right. Equally important, though, is to help the agency grow. And we can talk about this more in a little bit, but I think at Skydio, one thing we're very, very proud of is that our success services help our agencies every step of the way. Because a lot of these agencies, we don't want you to have to become an expert in running a drone program. We want you to be experts in policing, and we'll support you with developing a program that flourishes and grows over years. And so we built a customer success organization that's about 3 times as large as our closest competitor in the US for DFR, 3 times their entire company, right? We have in customer success. And so that's something that we're very proud of and continuing to invest in for our customers.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask about that because it sounds like a fairly complicated thing to set up a DFR program, and I'm sure these agencies do need help with everything from the certificates of, is it authorization to fly? Is it a COA? Okay, sorry. I had a moment of brain fog.
You're almost ready to run your own program.
No. All right, so we've been hearing about this for like 3 or 4 years now. But what are some of the trends that we're seeing? Are we going from, it used to be like smaller agencies just patrolling downtown with their drones because they were launching them off the roofs of their police stations or their headquarters. What are some of the trends that you're seeing out there with the agencies that you're working with?
Yeah, definitely. Look, the whole industry is on a path to DFR, but not just the whole industry. Every agency is on their own path to DFR. And so, the companies 4 or 5 years ago that tried to sell DFR, drone as first responder, right? They tried to sell this concept of dock-based drones on the rooftops, but the technology and the regulatory environment just weren't ready yet. And today, what we're finding is those aren't necessarily the barriers anymore. It still takes a long time to get a DFR program spun up because an agency has to figure out their staffing, their relationships with their local community, their funding, right? All of those myriad challenges that we talked about. And so the major trend is, yes, we are moving toward DFR, but the way that we're moving there is in phases. So it starts with having specialist pilots, right? You might have just a couple of folks who know how to fly drones. Maybe they bought them at Costco on the weekend and they brought it to work. And now they're doing missions and saving lives with them, right? So many amazing officers doing that kind of stuff across the country, right? And then you start realizing, hey, this is something we want to invest in. You throw your drones into the patrol cars, right? And now, instead of having to drive back to the station and pick up a drone and then drive back out, you've cut your response time in half to get a drone on scene, which we all know is critically important, right? If you're searching for a lost hiker, for example, the radius you have to search is going up exponentially with the time it takes you to get the drone on site. And then the next phase is what we call patrol-led drone as first responder, where you've still got your drones out in the patrol cars, but now you don't have to use those officers out in the patrol cars to do the flying anymore because they've got important police work to do too, right? So you just have them turn the drone on and leave it on top of their car. You let somebody back at the station do the flying out there through remote operations. And then finally, the final one is dock-based DFR, where we put the docks up on the roof. There's a much more complicated regulatory picture to navigate in doing those fully unsupervised beyond visual line of sight flights. And we do help our customers navigate that. But it's a lot easier to help them if they've taken these steps on the way. And so, our message to the industry, but also to every single agency that we work with is, hey, no matter where you are on your journey, on your path to DFR, right? We're really excited to help you get there. And we're not going to try to force the end upon you before you're ready and make you spend 5 years getting a program. We can do a lot of good things and we can save a lot of lives along the way if we take that step-by-step approach.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Guillaume. Appreciate this, and we appreciate Skydio for agreeing to sponsor this video for us.
Thank you. Yeah, we're thrilled to be here. And we fully recognize how difficult it is to get these drone as first responder programs off the ground, and the agencies that have done it have done such a great job, and are worthy of all kinds of praise. Oklahoma City, Las Vegas, New York, and as much as we've talked about us, I really do want to shine the spotlight on them, and we're excited to be able to support them and many more agencies. So thanks for having us.